There are two major things you need to keep in mind when it comes to producing reggaeton music, and one mistake most music producers often make. I'm going to share this with you while I recreate Karol G and Shakira's TQG. Also, be sure to watch to the end of this video because I've invited good friend of mine, Jon, the producer, six-time Grammy Award winning music producer who's worked with Shakira, Camilo, Becky G, and so many more. And he's come on board to share some gems and how you can break into the Latin industry as a music producer. So let's dive right in. Let's start by listening to my recreated version, and then I'm going to break that down and walk you step by step of the process, and then watch to the end because Jon's going to come in and share some amazing advice. All right, let's dive right into the drums. Now, when it comes to programming drums for reggaeton, 90%, maybe 95% of the heavy lifting is really all in the sound selection. It's in the samples that you're using, the sounds for the kick, snare, and all the other percussive elements that really pave the way for just getting into that genre or that niche. Because early on in my years of producing music, when I was trying to produce for reggaeton artists, I thought, hey, I can push the boundaries by just implementing different types of sounds, maintain the same pattern. But what ended up happening was it was just too hard to consume. It just didn't seem palpable. It just didn't it is a reggaeton pattern, but we miss that reggaeton sound for the drums. So that's a big part of programming a reggaeton beat. It's not necessarily just getting the pattern down. It's making sure that the sounds really do fit into that genre. So if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? So just going through some of my reggaeton samples that I've gotten over the years, I have a drum rack loaded with some of those sounds. We've got our kick, snare, and then we have another snare there for layer. And then I do another set of sounds for my beat switch up, which is predominantly used a lot in reggaeton as well. So these would primarily be a separate kick drum and a separate snare drum so that we can switch up the beat throughout the track. So beat one right here, here's the pattern. Really quick, I just want to give you the heads up that I've put together a bunch of templates, including vocal chains, effects, sounds, construction kits, loops, and samples that you can use in your projects absolutely free. This is also going to include a lot of the sessions of songs that I've broken down on this channel. So you want access to that? Simply visit beatacademy.com/pack or just click the link below in the description box to get access to this. And even if you're not using Ableton Live, there are plenty of resources that you can access from this link. So click the link below or visit beatacademy.com/pack. All right, let's jump right back in. Like I said, pretty straightforward. And we have some layering going on. So I have these two snares layered together. And then what I like about using the session view in Ableton Live is I can go back and forth with the switch up so that I can trigger the two different sound palettes. And when it comes to the beat switch up, the focus really does come down to that snare switch up, like the different type of snare sound. Notice that the pattern is the same, but we have a different sound selection for that pattern. It's what alleviates a lot of the monotony that you hear rather than just having the same kick and snare drum sound going throughout the whole track. Switching up the actual sound selection feels like it's bringing new life in different parts of the arrangement when you're producing reggaeton. So it's important that you switch it up, and you could do this several times. So the way I like working in the session view is I can just hit Command D to duplicate several of these and then just change over the sound palette as much as I want. And having the drum rack here in Ableton Live is really cool to do that because I can just load as many samples as I want that I have on my hard drive and then continuously go back and forth and switch in between. Now, unlike trap or a lot of hip hop, the kick really isn't going to have a lot of low end presence. Instead, this is really low mid punchiness that's coming through for these drums. So when I come to processing, I'm just going to excite that attribute. So I'm going to use the drum bus here from Ableton Live, a little bit of drive, crunch, but we're looking for punchiness. So I'm definitely going to be messing around with the transit designer here. I like the presence that adding more sustain to the Trend Designer gives. And then we're going to use the saturator after that. And I'm going to treat this almost as a limiter because I'm switching over to the digital clip here. And I'm going to kind of squash down the peak and the RMS, the average volume of that. And I want to get them a little bit closer together. And this is essentially what a limiter is doing. It's just bringing the peak down, and the dynamic range, that the headroom is just kind of getting closer to one another. And so I'm going to use the saturator, the digital clip for that. What's important is to make sure that the soft clip is on, and that's where the limiting is happening, and just crank about 6 dB or drive. Now I'm doing it just right until that threshing point where I hear too much distortion happen. So I'll scale it back to right there. Now, I want to actually accentuate the high mids of this. I want it to feel a lot wider. So a really cool way of doing that is using an EQ, but processing the mid and side information. So here in the EQ8 with Ableton Live, we have stereo, which is the default mode it comes in, left and right, and mid side. So you can click this, where now you're processing all the information that's coming at the mid, right? So right down the middle. And then you can hit the M button to switch over to side. So you're processing the information that is normally on the side. So I'm just widening this up a little bit here. And that's going to widen up some of the high mids there. So I can just solo that. Now I'm also going to layer the initial kick and snare pattern with another kick, but I'm not going to include that kick in my drum rack. Why? Well, because the processing I just did here with my initial foreground beat is good, and adding another kick there to kind of just give some more bottom end push is going to change the way these plugins react. It's going to get a little bit more saturated. There's a lot more information being added to the lower end, and I don't want that. I just want to kind of layer this new kick drum with a little bit more bottom end presence on top of the new the kick and snare pattern that I've done. So that's this track here. It's called Extra Kick. Let me just solo that. And it's just a kick drum pattern. And now we layer that with our kick and snare pattern. All right, now let's focus our attention on that cool main riff we can hear at the beginning of the song. And for this, I'm going to be using Ableton Live's wavetable, but you could use any 2 or more oscillator synth that you might have in your own DAW to follow along, and you'll pretty much get the same exact results. Now I'm going to use the wavetable, drag that over here. Now we're starting off with a soft tone, nothing too bright, so that means I'm not going to use a sawtooth or a square, so maybe a triangle or a sine. Now the sine wave does a pretty good job of capturing the right tone. So now let's add some white noise to this. The reason why is because we can hear a little bit of that white noise playing with the pattern. So oscillator 2, instead of basic shape, let's head over here to the white noise. And we are going to need to go from none to FM for the modulation here. So I'm going to go ahead and just bring the tuning down and the amount to 100%. Yep, and then we're just gonna lower the volume. So this is our way of mixing each oscillator's volume. And then let's go ahead and bring the cutoff down a little bit. And now what we're gonna do is just add a little bit of unison here. And add some reverbs. That's going to give it a nice dimension there. So I'll go to our audio effects. Now let's add a little bit of warble, some distortion, some hiss and sound. And a great plugin that has all that included would be RC20 by Excellent Audio. So just click this, drag it onto here. We're going to use some retro color. And let's cycle through some of the noise here. And expand here on the warble. Now, a little bit more distortion, but we're gonna use the EQ to just really carve out all that high-end hiss. There you go, expand the width just a little bit. And I'm gonna use a compressor here for a little bit of sidechain action. This is gonna create a nice little groove as we start to hear this alongside the drums. So open this up, hit sidechain, and let the extra kick track be the source of the sidechain here. Now, one big mistake that a lot of producers often make when they're producing reggaeton is they're trying to get a lot of the low end from the kick presence rather than just using the kick as the punch or the low mid punch and letting the low end come from the sub bass. For that, I'm going to use Ableton Live's wavetable, and we're going to start with our sine wave. So oscillator 1 is set to a sine wave, and then oscillator 2 is going to be a sawtooth, because this bass in particular, having that sawtooth layer gives it a lot more presence, so you can actually hear the melodic movement of the bass. So by the sine wave alone, that's totally fine, but the sawtooth and lower just a little bit, you hear a little more of that buzziness come through. Make sure I go from polyphonic to monophonic, and that's it. Now what we're gonna do is have Ableton Live's amp simulator and set to bass mode, so we get a little bit more gain and crunch from this. Now the compressor is going to be used to control the over dynamics, especially with sub basses. It's good because some notes will resonate more than others. And then I'm using this EQ really to control the presence of the buzz in the bass. So this is just going to remove some of the high end. And now let's put this together. Now there's also a really cool bass part in the intro that just adds that nice tension right before we get into the main chorus. So let's just go over that as well. So that's the bass part we have here. So for this, we're gonna have oscillator 1 and 2 set to a sawtooth to get that growl presence and the buzziness there. But oscillator 1 is going to be set a whole octave lower. So that's how we get that first initial sound. And then we're gonna make sure that our cutoff frequency is really down, and we're sending the cutoff frequency to our envelope 2. We're mapping that just about 31. Now, try at 100 and then scale it back, because the amount that you give here determines how much envelope 2 will have an impact on the cutoff frequency. So I'm at 31 right here, and if I go to my mod sources, now we're at envelope 2. So we want that nice initial swell, that whoa, that happens with a slow attack. Messing around the distance between the decay and the sustain, you really get to hear the relationship between decay and sustain in this section here when you see how long it takes for that growl to come back down. You get that whoa, really quick snap right back. So I want to extend the decay to just have it linger, scroll back a little bit longer. We're going to wind up the sound by choosing our classic unison here, and just a little bit at 3 voices. And I had a filter here, just messing around with maybe refiltering the sound, but never used it here. And then I have pitch drop from the Max for Live plugins. So you just go to Max for Live, go to Audio Effects, and look for pitch drop. And this gives you that really cool tape stop effect. So within my Beat Academy Pro membership, I oftentimes invite industry professionals and good friends of mine to chime in and share their perspective and equip my members with advice on how to take their next step with their music careers. And so that's where this call is from. So every now and then, an industry professional will chime in, and my Beat Academy members will get to hang with them, ask questions. And so this little snippet is from one of those monthly calls. So if you want more information on how you can become a Beat Academy Pro member and seek professional guidance in helping you produce your music, then visit beatacademy.com for more information. All right, check this out.
My dream is to become a big Latino producer. I am from Mexico. What will you consider to be the best advice for a producer like me? I recently started to sell beats on BeatStars, but I don't know if this is the right path. Gracias, un saludo, and I agree that the tiny sample, the tiny splice sample pack is the bomb. All right.
Yo, well, hey, how's it going? So definitely, Mexico is one of the biggest markets for Latin music. So you're already a step ahead by being a part of that. I think that a big part of the Latin industry is realizing that this is a collaborative industry. I know the American market has a lot of artists that take outside songs that, maybe put their little details and spice after a song is written and pitched to them. But I know the majority of Latin artists really like to be involved from the ground up. And one of the things that I really like about the Latin market, which is a little bit different in the American market, but the publishers and the A&Rs, they do not care where you're from. They don't care how much money you have. They don't care if you made this on your iPhone or if you made it in a studio with the most expensive consoles. They will listen to what you send. I have never met an A&R or anybody in a publishing company that has ever said no to listening to new music. And I think that's part of the reason why so many of those A&Rs and publishers are doing so well right now is because they listen to everybody. So if you have any music, go online, go on their Instagrams, reach out to them. They will answer, I promise you. If they don't answer, it's because they're busy, but they will eventually answer. I know it's a little bit harder to reach out to some producers and some writers because they're really in the trenches of it, grinding out what they have to deliver. But the A&Rs and the publishers, they will listen to your stuff. I know the American market might have a little bit more of a, not closed door policy, but might have might have to have somebody intro you in some aspects.
Yeah,
but man, I mean,
they're a bit more guarded.
Yeah, exactly. And it's, I get it because there's always licensing issues. You never know. Maybe you send something and something like that sounds similar that they release later on, and you always got to be careful. But there's a huge A&R with Sony Latin. His name's Ale Reglero, and I can personally vouch for him. He will listen to your shit. So if you guys send him stuff, I promise you, he will listen to it. And if he feels that it works with an artist, it might be your first placement, and that could help take you out forward. But definitely go about that route. And also, collaborate with your communities. Like what you're talking about, your forums, these are all creatives. It doesn't matter where everyone's living. You don't have to work with your neighbors. I was in a session 2 weeks ago with a guy from Sweden who was working at his 2 a.m. and it was like, afternoon for me. And there's people who are passionate about their craft and they don't care, if they're working on Zoom or if they're working on a FaceTime call. Reach out, make great music, and show it to people. Because if you're just making stuff and it's sitting on your hard drive and you're only putting it on one place, you're not sending your stuff out enough. I think BeatStars is a great starting point, but definitely use every avenue you have. I'm sure we grew up in a very similar environment where the age of YouTube was in the very early stages when we were starting our music industry lives, and I wish we had stuff like this. I remember finding one interview of somebody I knew of, like in the industry, that I knew a name of, and watching that interview and watching it over and over again. And now to have people like you doing this, this incredible generosity of, sharing information and empowering, use all the avenues, use all the assets you have around you, because those will help push you forward.
Bro, that's awesome. Yeah. And just as you mentioned, we Jon and I both wish we had the availability to the access that we're seeing nowadays for you guys. So I think one of the issues could be that you guys might be overwhelmed with too much information and frozen. So I think it's just like what Jon is saying, swing the bat, because you'll never be able to hit a home run if you don't swing, right? Yeah. So just pitch it.
100%.
So,
there's actually I want to say it's like, I forgot which actor it was, but they said something about their industry and their careers that's a lot like surfing, is that you're going to go, and to get to the wave that you're going to ride, you're going to have to go through 100 waves that are going to hit you and knock you down. And then you're going to get that one wave and you're going to ride it, and everyone's going to cheer you while you're on that wave, and that wave will end, and you're going to have to go back out and get hit by 100 no's and get that one yes. I mean, I'm in a very good position right now with my career. I have a lot of stuff that's happening right now, and I'm very fortunate for it. But just because of like, I've got 6 Latin Grammy nominations, and last week I got told no on 5 records I submitted, you know, out of the 6 that I submitted. So it's like, just because you're just because on the outside it looks like you're crushing it, you're going to get used to that very quickly, that there's no consistency of yes. It's always going to be no. And you just got to make sure that you remember that the yeses are always going to empower you more than the no's will. And you got to just, you know, push through them.
Well, I hope this video was encouraging and helpful in any way. And if you'd like to be a Beat Academy Pro member so you can have opportunities to hang not just with me, but with other industry professionals, then definitely visit beatacademy.com. And as my gift to you for watching this video and making it all the way to the end, I want to compile all of the sessions that I share on this YouTube channel of the breakdowns of the songs that I do. And I put the majority of those sessions into an easy, accessible download link, which you can have by clicking the link below in the description box or by visiting beatacademy.com/pack. This is going to walk you through all the Ableton Live sessions, sounds that I use so that you can go ahead, follow along while watching the videos and access the sounds and the techniques that I'm sharing with you to help you with your music production. Once again, be sure to like and subscribe. That helps the channel out and keeps you updated with upcoming videos. Until then, I'll see you next time.